With me now in the studio are two of the founders of the Black Lives Solidarity Global Initiative. We have Toi Windham and Stefanie Davis. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
we appreciate the time.
So over the weekend on Saturday, Taipei saw the first ever solidarity rally in support of Black Lives Matter. Why was it important to hold a rally like this in Taiwan?
It's important to have something like this because we are Black, that's the first thing. And we live here in Taiwan, so we wanted to bring awareness about the things that are happening in the US and how those things still affect us. And then bringing awareness to Taiwanese people to show that they need to know about the things that we're affected by.
In addition to that, it was also important for some of us who have been active in the movement back at home to be able to have an actual moving thing to be able to participate in here in Taiwan. Yes, as Toi said, the issues are not related to Taiwan, it's related to being back in America, but it's important for us to be able to physically do something. And this was one of the ways of doing so. And as we did this rally, it also allowed us to fundraise to send money back to organizations that could be able to help stop injustices and police brutality.
Can you talk for a little minute about what it was like to stand on stage and, you know, after, I mean, you pulled the whole event together in a week. And then
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
But then, like, standing on stage, what was the instant feeling that you had?
I honestly, the first thought that went through my mind was, holy moly.
Wow.
We did it. This is real. This is happening. The people are here and they're ready to listen. Yeah. And it was just a breath of fresh air. All the hard work was valid. We did it for a reason. And it just was really breathtaking, honestly. It really was.
The energy at the park, it was just overwhelming. It was invigorating because we were able to see so many people from so many different communities around Taiwan come and support this movement. I know I had some friends from Taichung come all the way up and from Kaohsiung and all over Taipei. Local people and foreigners alike all showed up, showed their support and showed their love. So it was really encouraging because we've been overwhelmed by so many negative things in the news and the media, and it was really nice to have a positive image, a positive just love from everyone.
What are some of the things that happened during the rally that you will take with you? What are some of the moments? Can you maybe tell us what the thing you'll be thinking about this week, Stefanie?
The main thing that I've been thinking about the most has really been the 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence that we did for George Floyd. One of the things that I was able to talk with my students about, and this is why it's important to me, was because I was able to explain to them why that was important and why his death means so much to me, because it could have been me. I know I don't check money here in Taiwan or in America. I don't have that little marker that they have back in the States to see if it's counterfeit. And so I get money from one location, spend it in another, and I just think that it's real. And so if a store owner came to me and said, this is fake, I would also be confused and say, what do you mean? And so for that situation to go the way that it did, I just personally felt that it could have been me. And that's why it felt so real.
And we should explain too that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that's the amount of time that the police officer knelt on his neck before he died.
Correct.
As I was there in the audience and it was completely silent, like what impressed me the most was how long that felt.
Yes.
It felt very long. And for someone to deliberately do that to another human says a lot. It was just really overwhelming standing there with all the other organizers and just feeling that and just feeling the amount of time that it took. And not at any point during that did that particular police officer or any of the other ones do anything to stop it. And there were, in the video, you see other people trying to tell the police officers to stop. And George Floyd also saying, I can't breathe. And it's just mind-boggling. I don't know how someone can do that to another person.
Let's talk about some of the other moments from the rally. One of the other things that I saw that I thought that really left an impression on me was the part where everyone knelt down together.
接下来1分钟，想邀请各位一起单膝跪下。如果你相信黑人的命也是命，请你和我们一起单膝跪下。
This stand wasn't for me. This stand wasn't.
There were several of us that were very adamant about including Colin Kaepernick's moment, right, of kneeling. And the reason why he was doing it needed to be explicit. It wasn't about the flag. It wasn't about
Or the
military
national anthem at all.
Right. It wasn't about the anthem. It was truly about the police brutality and the injustices that Black Americans are dealing with, right? And the reason for him kneeling was just his way of being able to say it should end, because the anthem truly is about slavery. And so that moment was very important for all of us because that's really kind of where it started, is the physical view of being able to stand in solidarity with someone was by kneeling during the anthem.
Now, we've seen Black Lives Matter protests and also solidarity rallies in support of Black Lives Matter taking place all over the world.
Yeah.
How does a rally like this differ in Taiwan from other rallies or protests you might have seen in other parts of the world?
Sure.
It differs because it was more positive. It showed that we are here peacefully and we're showing that we support this movement. I know in the U.S., there is some animosity or some anger behind it, and rightfully so. But for us here being in Taiwan, we are not citizens here, for one. And then two, we still wanted to show our love and our support and show our brothers and sisters back home, like, hey, we're here for you guys. We're doing this with you guys. And not just us as Black people, but everyone here in Taiwan that want to be involved are here to support.
And for me, it's a little bit different because in Ferguson, right, back in 2016, going to those protests and those rallies, it's different because the demographic of the audience is very similar. There is obviously going to be other cultures that joined us back in Ferguson, but here the majority culture is Taiwanese. And so that is the majority of what we saw, which was great. And it was very refreshing because it helped me understand that, oh, there are people who don't look like me that do understand where I'm coming from. They may not ever experience it in the same way, but they do at least have empathy towards me experiencing this. And so it's different because of that aspect, but also the same in the sense of we were all there for a peaceful reason, and we were all there collectively in unity to say that these things that should not be happening should stop, and it should end.
Do you feel like, from your experiences of being in Ferguson and at the Black Lives Matter protests or rallies in Ferguson, do you feel like there's a different sort of energy, maybe more of an urgency in Ferguson? How would you contrast the two?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's more urgency, right? We need change to happen now. We're here in the streets protesting and saying that these things are wrong to the police's face. These things that maybe not you personally are doing, but the entire force, the force you work for is wrong, and it needs to change. And the reason that's different for Taiwan is we were not saying the Taiwanese police were wrong. We were saying, we're voicing our opinion to say, no, back at home, these things, these injustices are still wrong. And we want to stand here and ask the people that are here to stand with us in solidarity and in unity to say, yes, we also agree that the things happening to Black people around the world is wrong and it should stop.
And also, with it being in the States, like people who are protesting and holding rallies, at those actual rallies, they're still facing those same forces, facing the police there and those threats that something could happen to them because the police officers feel a certain way or going to act a certain way. So for us, yeah, it has nothing to do with Taiwan as a country or the police, but that's just where we are physically because this is our home. We felt like we had to act, and that's why we organized this.
But even though it was largely about something that's happening very far away, I was really impressed by your having Taiwanese Indigenous people come and kind of open up the rally. Can you talk a little bit about why that was important for you?
It's important because the Indigenous people here in Taiwan also face some form of discrimination. It may not be the same or to the same level as what we may face as Black people in America or other Black people in different countries, but they have faced some injustices here in Taiwan over the course of history. And so we felt it was important to have them included and show that we are working together. We're working in solidarity so that we can support one another. Because, I mean, when you put it simply, this is also their land to begin with. We as Black people, as foreigners, we are just visitors in this country. So we also had to pay our respect and acknowledge them at the same time.
How do you balance kind of the need to find ways to have the movement resonate with Taiwan with kind of the need to make sure that it is still about Black lives? How do you balance that? Is that difficult?
It is a little bit of a challenge, but I do think that it's important, right? As Toi was saying, it is important to bring the Indigenous tribes on to have them participate because their discrimination does directly affect the people of Taiwan. And so for me, and I think for most of us, we were saying, that is not my place to provide you with that voice. I should not say that and voice that on your behalf. You should be able to voice that, right? And I feel the same way as it relates to Black issues. Why would I want someone of Indian descent to voice my issues for me? I should be able to have the stage or the opportunity to voice my issues related to my issues, right? And so that was why it was important for us. And then in addition to that, it's just, we need to be able to share with others and the Taiwanese people a level of education, right? They don't understand our experience personally, but there are things that could be learned from this. One thing being, you know, the issue of Blackface and why that is not a thing that should be happening here in Taiwan or anywhere else. And so education is also a tool that we can use as it relates to this rally.
I'm glad you brought that up. And can you maybe expand upon that a little bit? I'm particularly interested to know, like, and obviously being Black is it's not a singular experience.
No.
But can you maybe contrast your personal experiences of being Black in America with being Black in Taiwan?
Yeah.
How does that different?
Being Black in America, there are systems in the government and the police force that are in place that directly threatens our lives. There are ways that we have been discriminated against in terms of jobs, education, and housing, so forth and so on, that have been perpetuated and continue to be enforced even today. Things like old systems that have been created by generations ago. And so those directly affect us. But here, our lives are not, like our actual life is not going to be at risk.
In danger, yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be endangered. But there are things that we still encounter on a daily basis where people may look at us a certain way or may discriminate us on a lower level, such as microaggressions or people touching my hair or sometimes how they may point at us.
And point at your skin.
Yeah, and so it's like little things that really bother us, but it's not going to always, it's not a direct threat.
Yeah.
Does it feel different? I mean, when people do things like, for example, try to touch your hair, does it feel different in Taiwan than it does in America?
Yeah, it is a little bit different, right? Think about it in the sense of, instead of stabbing you with a large knife or cutting off your arm, instead what happens is they just poke at you. And, you know, the first poke is kind of like, ha 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 ha, I am ticklish, it's okay. But then after a while and you're just sitting there living your normal life, those pokes get annoying.
Yes.
And it becomes a really, really big bother. And at one point in time, sometimes you're just like,
I don't want to deal with it.
Just cut me with something deeper so that we can address
so we can
it.
deal with it, right?
Right, so we can address it, go to the hospital and I get surgery. But these pokes, please stop. And so due to the microaggressions that are occurring, it requires education, right? We have to be able to educate and be able to share that some of the things that you're doing are not okay. And just one-offs, you know, one person experiencing a Black person that they've seen in person for the first time is, just think about it like as you watch the NBA, right? You watch it and you turn it off and you move on. You don't stare at it and say, "Ooh, tofa," right?
Yeah, right.
You,
Hair.
Right. You notice that the person is different, and you take your gaze and you continue. Oh, I have to. Oh, this is my stop. I should probably be paying attention to that instead.
And sometimes being here in Taiwan, a lot of things that some people may do, it's out of curiosity, which, like Stefanie says, sometimes we're the only Black person that some people may ever encounter, or the first one that they encounter. And so they may ask questions, which I will happily answer questions about anything in terms of me being a Black person or just a foreigner here in Taiwan. And then other things that happen are out of ignorance. So we do have to bring awareness to the fact that these things do happen, because Taiwanese people may not realize that it actually happens because it doesn't affect them directly, but they may not know that they're actually doing something wrong. So we have to bring the awareness and show them, like, hey, you doing that or touching our hair actually bothers me. That is not okay. And they may have been just like, oh my God, curly hair. But then it's like, no, if that happens every day by a different person every day, then it does get bothersome. It does get tiring. So we have to educate people, locals and foreigners too, to show them, like, hey, these things are not okay. And hopefully everyone is receptive. So.
Well, let's talk about blackface. You did bring that up.
Sure.
We have had some problems with people putting on blackface in Taiwan. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what's the best way to deal with that? Ooh, mood change in the studio.
Well, I think for me, one, it's unfortunate and it's very upsetting as a Black person. I get very unsure about where it's coming from, because there's one side of the coin that says, well, it's coming from a level of ignorance. And then there's the other side of the coin that says, well, I'm just doing it for likes. Well, for me, it's a situation where if you're trying to mimic or be like someone, wear the same or similar glasses, wear the same or similar shirts, things you can take off, not makeup, right? If I want to represent myself or show appreciation for the Asian culture, at no point in time do I plan to put on a lot of makeup on my arms or face to resemble the skin tone of someone who's Asian. Instead, I will first learn about their culture, one, then two, next, find other Asians who are who represent this culture and ask them more understanding questions to learn and educate myself. And then three, maybe I will, based off of that education I gained, I will go buy and purchase attire that represents that culture in appreciation, right? Not in appropriation. Appropriation and appreciation are two separate things, and blackface is appropriation, and it's still not okay, especially in 2020.
It goes beyond appropriation for me, in my opinion, because if people really did their studying and actually educated themselves about the history of blackface, they would know that it was a very disrespectful and harmful and deliberate act that people did hundreds of years ago to make fun and mock Black people. So it's not that it's like, hey, I want to be like you or appropriate our culture. It's just like, it's very disrespectful, and you wouldn't do it if you knew. And so, and so people in 2020 still doing it, and the fact that it's happened multiple times in the last month, so recently.
Yeah, it's happened with YouTubers or dance groups, is it,
Yeah.
that was doing it? On TikTok and kind of other...
And YouTube.
YouTube.
It's really, really upsetting, for sure.
Yeah, something that I didn't expect that we would still be discussing and dealing with in 2020. It seems like it comes back cyclically.
Yeah, same.
It's a never-ending kind of,
Who would have thought?
task to educate people.
Yeah.
So what kind of response did you get from the rally last weekend?
Oh, it's been a great response. One, a lot of photos, which I greatly appreciate because during the moment I didn't have time to capture a lot of pictures or videos. So the photos that have been sent by various amounts of people have been really appreciated. But then also the feedback, some feedback related to how we handled certain situations that occurred during the rally to keep it peaceful, as well as, I really walked away with wanting to reflect on what it is that was spoke about at the rally, wanting to reflect and educate themselves. And that's the main thing that I hoped people walked away with was, first, allow me to reflect on my actions, on my behavior. And now how do I educate myself so that I can learn more and do better? Because once you know better, you must do better. And you can't continue to reside on the level of, well, I just don't know, level of ignorance. Ignorance is not okay.
Yeah. I walked away just feeling very hopeful because there was so much love and support and just great energy that everyone could feel. Like you could just feel it as you were standing there in the crowd and for us on the stage, like to see the numbers growing and then people really taking it all in, taking in the moment, taking in every part of the program that we had organized, and being receptive, because there were parts that people definitely didn't know in terms of the information when we read out each person's stories that had been killed by police in the U.S. That was very emotional for me, and it made it even more real because these were everyday people living their everyday life and got murdered by police. And so seeing that and people feeling that made me energized to do more. And we know this is only the beginning because this is a whole movement. It can't just be like just one rally, one post or one news story is not going to change a society. It's just, this is only the beginning, and we're definitely going to keep the movement going.
Yeah. I won't promise that we'll have a rally every week. I cannot promise a rally every 2 weeks. It was a lot. It was a lot to plan and organize. But we can definitely promise that there will be more to come, definitely from an educational standpoint. The Taiwanese, the local individuals who are here, I think it just really comes down to education and having the conversation, which is what we're doing here today. Conversation and education is the key. And so we'll continue to have those sessions so that we can communicate and educate, so that we can have improvements, so we can all learn and grow.
Well, I think it was a wonderful energy that I felt at the rally. It was definitely the most diverse gathering that I've ever seen in Taiwan in the last 20 years, which is exciting because everybody was coming from different walks of life but had kind of a unified purpose. So I definitely look forward to seeing what comes next for the Black Lives Solidarity Global Initiative. And I want to thank, of course, Toi Windham and Stefanie Davis for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for
Happy
having
to
us.
be here.
It's wonderful having you. And if you want to connect with them, we're going to have information in the show notes below.